Hi guys, my name is Stephanie and we're going to do a little craft today. I'm going to teach you how to make Shrinky-Dink. So this is the package for the Shrinky-Dink paper. It comes with a clear one, so obviously clear, and then it comes with a frosted one. This is what the base is going to look like. Then what you're going to do is create a design. You can either draw your design by freehand directly onto the paper. I kind of suggest drawing it on a piece of white paper first. That way, if you do make an error, it's just the white paper and not the Shrinky-Dink paper. Once you are satisfied with your design, you're going to then put it in the oven with your parents' help if you are a child, and it will turn into something approximately this size, depending on what size the original Shrinky-Dink paper was. So to demonstrate today, I'm going to use the frosted one. I tend to like that one. It holds the ink a little bit better. So when it comes to choosing what writing utensil you're going to use, if you're using the clear one, or they do come in white sometimes, they're a little bit harder to find, I would suggest using only Sharpies because the ink doesn't smudge off as much. With the frosted one, you could choose to either use Sharpies or pencil crayons, either or work. So we're gonna start with tracing. I'm gonna choose to trace the design that I wanna do. I'm just gonna start by tracing it. You can start wherever you like. Let's start. Oops. See, and even if the page does move, you can easily line it back up where you need it to be. And you don't have to do all of the detail from the picture. Like, I'm not gonna do the little butterfly that's in there, and later on I'm not gonna do the frill part of the scarf. I find sometimes, especially if you're using Sharpies, the finer detail can be a bit more challenging to do. Okay, so I'm almost done with the tracing, and it has slid around a few times on me, but like I said before, you could just line it up, no problem. And once we're done tracing it, I'm gonna go ahead and color it. Okay, so as you can see, my bear and my little airplane here, I've finished them. I am satisfied with what it looks like, so I'm gonna go ahead now and cut it. The one thing you wanna be aware of is when you are doing a Shrinky-Dink, if you are choosing to leave it a square, like I have here, or if you do want to cut it out into something like that, just make sure the edges are curved. So don't do them straight. Make sure that they are a little bit curved, because what's gonna happen after is once we go to shrink them, the plastic becomes very hard and very, very sharp, and sometimes it will break if it is too pointy. So just make sure you curve your edges. But I am gonna go ahead and cut this out exactly the way it would be. Okay, so I'm gonna start. I don't like excess paper, so I'm just gonna do a quick trim all around. And again, you don't have to cut it out exactly like on the lines. You could leave it something like this where it's more full, but I am gonna cut this one out on the lines. It can be tricky when you are cutting out Shrinky-Dink paper, so just make sure you have a good pair of working scissors that are decently sharp. Otherwise, you'll get very jagged edges. See, right. And you can always go back to a part. You don't need to do every little detail like that piece. I will come back to later. So I'm almost done cutting out our bear and airplane here. Just a few more pieces to do. And then I've decided that this is the other fun part about Shrinky-Dinks, is once you create whatever design you're gonna do, you can now decide, what do you want to do with this cute little piece of art? Do you want to make it as a fridge magnet? Do you want to use it as a keychain? I know that some people like to put them on zippers, so that's always an option as well. And once you decide, you're going to either need, a key ring or a magnet. If you are deciding to put it on a key ring, you will also need your hole puncher at this point. And all the materials were shown at the beginning, so just pause if you need to refresh what materials you may or may not need. All right, so this one here, I've decided to make it into a keychain. So I'm gonna put my magnets away, and I've decided that I want it to look like the bear is actually flying. So I'm gonna poke the hole punch, and I am going to put it in right here. Just give it a good punch. You may have to fiddle with it. Oh, that one came out perfect actually, because you are going through plastic, so make sure it's a good grip on it. So always hole punch. If you're gonna use a keychain, always hole punch prior to baking it, because once you bake it, it's pretty hard and you won't be able to get a hole puncher through that. Okay, so now we're gonna move on to baking. So our oven's been preset from prior at 325. When you're putting your Shrinky-Dink in the oven, you wanna make sure that it is color side up. So the piece that you were doing the coloring on, make sure that is facing up. You can also use foil or something like parchment paper to put down first. So we're gonna put it in the oven now. When you put it in, put it on the middle rack and let it cook for about 1 to 3 minutes. So it's gonna bake. Now you will see that, I'm gonna close the door, but what you will see is that the pieces of the paper, of the Shrinky-Dink paper, will shrivel up like that paper ball I was talking about earlier. And I will try to open the door to show you guys what it looks like as it's doing that. Okay, so when you're placing your designs on the baking pan, I would suggest approximately 2 inches apart from each other, just so you kind of give each design its own space to fall back down, because once it crumples up into that ball, it will fall and it will become flat. So you want to make sure you give them enough space to flatten out afterwards. This is what I was talking about earlier. You can see the sides have already started to curl in. My hope is that it will flatten back out. It's been about 1 minute and you can already see that the shriveling up part process has kind of ended and it's now flattening and just shrinking a tiny bit more. So we're gonna close the oven and we're gonna leave it in there for another 1.5 to 2 minutes. Okay, so I just checked. I'm satisfied with what it looks like. It's flat. The size is pretty small, shrunk up quite a bit. So I'm gonna take it out of the oven. When you're doing this, always use an oven mitt for your own protection. And make sure when you're placing it on a countertop that it's not directly on the counter. So we're gonna leave it sit here for about 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes, to let it cool. Once it's cooled, you can then take it back to your workstation. From there, you can then be creative with it. You want it into a keychain, you can maybe add some thread and beading and add that to your keychain just to spice it up a little bit. But again, we're gonna let it sit for about 5 to 7 minutes before we go back. So this is what the little airplane looked like all done up. So we traced it, colored it, cut it. I put the tiny hole from the hole puncher for my key ring, and this is what it turned out to be. So now what we can do is, instead of just adding the key ring, we can actually use some thread or yarn, twine, whatever you have around your house, and we can actually add some beads to it to make it into a bit of a longer keychain. So I finished my little design with the beads, and as you can see, I just did a little pattern and then my name. My suggestion for this piece before we attach it to our Shrinky-Dink would be make a knot as close to your last bead as possible. And this, what it will do is it'll prevent the rest of the beads from sliding around, and it'll make it nice and tight. Now, if you want them to slide around, by all means, don't worry, don't bother with the knot, but I want mine to stay still as possible. So I'm gonna try and do it as close to the last bead as possible. Okay, so that you can see the knot there, and it's pretty close. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm actually going to feed this through. I'm gonna feed this thread through the tiny hole in the Shrinky-Dink that I made. May take a few tries, may get it on the first try. There it is. All right, so now it looks like so. So that's what it looks like right now. Okay, if I hold it up, my name and my little airplane with my teddy bear. Now what I suggest trying to do is to thread this piece of string back through the same hole, except in the opposite direction now. So you can still see I have space. I'm going to push it through, and it's gone through, and pull it. That will keep it from moving around too much. And again, if you want it closer to the beads, you would just do this closer, pull up one end and pull the other as you feed it through. Just take some time. Okay, so now that it's done there, I'm going to tie a knot. I would do a couple knots on this one because you don't want the first knot to come out. Maybe like 2 should be fine, 3 at the most. Again, try to get as close to your piece as possible. Okay, so I made that first knot. Now take your thread again and loop it through the hole. But this time, instead of pulling it all the way through, I want you to hold the hooped part in one hand and take the piece that you just threaded through the hole and put it into the loop and pull it. That'll help make a nice secured knot without you having to make a knot on your own. Okay, so now that I've made the knot, I've already cut the string. It's nice and tight, it's not going anywhere. Now I'm going to attach this piece, the first loop that you made, onto my key ring. So just hold it open, put your fingers between them, and then just slide it on. Around. And there you go. Just make sure it's on both pieces. And there you have it. And then just cut this excess piece of string off here. We don't need it anymore. Get rid of my garbage pieces, and it's done. And now I'm going to attach it to my key. Let's use the big one. And just pull it through. And there you have it, a cute little keychain. This is, as you can see, this is another one that I did. I did a ladybug, and this one's kind of curling up a lot more than the little airplane one. So I'm going to close the oven, and we're going to see and hope it goes back down to flat. Okay, so it's been in there for about 2.5 minutes. So I'm now going to take this one out. Again, make sure you have your oven mitt on at all times. And we're going to bring it up, close your oven, and place it here. Let's see. Again, let it sit for about 5 to 7 minutes. This is another one that's really curling into itself, and that's normal. Like I said, you can see that it is flattening down now as I'm recording, and it's gonna go right flat again. So this one has really shriveled up, and it's really gone up. So we're gonna close the oven now so that it can continue to get smaller. As you can see, it's gone flat again. The curled up part has now flattened. So we're gonna get ready to take it out of the oven in about another minute. This one is really shriveling up, and I'm really hoping it's gonna go back down to normal. So I'm gonna close the oven so it can do so. So as you can see, this one here, it kind of did get stuck together. So it's not done melting yet, but I'm going to try and see if I can separate the two pieces that are touching. Try not to use your hands because it is hot. I don't know if it's gonna work, but I am really trying. I don't think it's gonna work. Because the issue is that it gets really, I may have fixed it. They're not touching, but now let's see if it actually fixes itself and goes back down once I put it back in the oven now. So it looks like it is flattening back down, which I was able to save it in time. That's why you kind of need to be at your oven so that you can make sure that if it does happen, you can kind of catch it and try to solve the problem before you can't and you lose your piece.